So anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I really appreciate it. And
Of course.
yeah, so I always like to start with, I guess, outside of songwriting, how much writing are you doing? Journaling, anything like that. Do you do any writing outside of songwriting?
So I am not big on journaling. I have tried. It's always such like self-care technique, but I have just found my most therapeutic form of writing is songwriting. And I jokingly, but not, say I sing my thoughts. Like that's just my favorite form of expression. It's like it's not a complete thought if it doesn't come with a melody. So journaling just doesn't work for me. When I was younger, in fact, beside my bed in my nightstand, I still have my two childhood diaries. So up until probably like right when my career really kicked into full swing, I was a diary kid.
Yeah.
But then it just, the songwriting took over. And yeah, again, I've tried, but I do, no, you know what? I'm going to take that back. I'm going to say one addition to that is that I do write letters I don't send. I do write letters I don't send. And, I do find that to be therapeutic too, because I am somebody who's very impulsive with texts and voice memos. And I have to learn to take a step back and go, oh, maybe what I want to say to somebody else has nothing to do with them. It's just something I have to process. So
right.
You just made me realize that I do that.
So that's kind of journaling. So do you save those letters?
Yeah, I have them. I have them mainly they're mainly in my phones. There's some handwritten. So I guess that is a form of journaling. I mean, but it's very obviously direct. It's very specific. Yeah. I don't need to put everything on paper. Yeah. I mean, and I used to write songs at an alarming rate. And so I have so many books. In fact, JT, you want to grab some of those books? Some of my songwriting books are up there. I'll just thumb through. I'll show you. It's so insane. And that again, when I was younger, and now I'm a little bit more to the voice memos. And then when something's really worth putting on paper, I put it on paper.
Yeah. How often do you get ideas after just waking up? I hear that a lot too. I mean, an idea, you write it down. In fact, I read this novel called Homeland Elegies, and the author, the narrator is a writer himself, and he has this technique where he actually attaches with a string a pencil to his hand so that when he wakes up, he can immediately write. And that blew my mind. And because someone told him
that's amazing.
Yeah, if you wait like 5 or 10 seconds, it's gone. So how often does that happen? You wake up in that melody or that lyric?
A lot of it's in my sleep or in that half sleep state. And so I do sleep with the phone with the voice recorder nearby.
Yeah.
Because as much as so I'm almost like a mathematician with music. So I'll be in my sleep, I'll be saying to myself, okay, remember it goes from E flat to G flat, it's eighth notes, and then it goes to an A. And I'm trying to talk myself into staying asleep. And then I'm like, Deb, you're never going to remember this. You have got to pull yourself out of this state and put it down now. So that's what I do. It's not as much for me after just waking up, though. It's more as I'm falling asleep. Huh. And then when it's it's really just when the channels are clear. I was going through a lot of chaotic thoughts this weekend, and there was a lot of emotional crap going on in my life. And I worked my way through that, and then songs started dropping in, and I went, I've cleared some of the chaos from here because songs are, I always take that as a great sign because they just drop in. I'm sure you hear this every day as you talk to writers. I mean, some people like Diane Warren go and they go, I'm going to write a song now. And she's done that brilliantly for, decades. I'm not that way. Those songs are never the most special. I can do it, but, and I know how. Ahmet Ertegun said to me when he was alive, he said, you know how to write a song. I get that you can, any day of the week, you can write a song that's going to be a good song. He's like, but it's the special songs we want. It's that inspired X Factor. I don't know where that came from. It just dropped in. By the way, so I just was, I have these books that just,
Perfect.
hold on, these aren't even the most, wait, that's not even the most, hold on, wait a second. These are not the most crowded ones, JT, wait.
Wait, so that's your writing or that's someone else? Are those books? Those are your books?
No, this is my writing,
Nice.
I write I don't even know what this is. It's some song called Who Are They? I don't remember when I wrote it. It's probably, of knowing me, who are they anyway? They say this and they say that and who are they? But I have this way of it's like hieroglyphics you'd see on a cave.
Yeah.
There's the notes and then little indications of rhythms that are just, for eighth notes or sixteenths. And I write timing and I write chords. And I always do this. I always start here and then go here.
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
I don't know why. I've done that since I'm 11 years old. I have no idea. And then I flip. I go here to here. I go here to here, and then to here.
That's fascinating. I interviewed Daniel Lanois, the producer, who a couple months ago, and he talked about, I think he said all of his songs are on 11 by 22 art paper, because there's thought bubbles, there's lines, there's arrows, there's no linear form to it at all. It's all over the place. And he may have a verse here and a verse there and thought bubbles and arrows. And I'm fascinated by that because that's a little bit of what you're doing. There's not linear at all, right? That process. I wonder why that is.
No, I don't know why that is. It's just been that way forever. And I just understand my own shorthand. I often wonder if one day when I'm not on this earth, if someone found all these, if they could potentially transcribe them or record them. I should probably just teach somebody.
Right.
Or they'll just live in this weird, but yeah, they're all like that.
That is great.
It's kind of crazy.
So is it important to create every day? I mean, some songwriters say don't force it because when you force it, it's derivative. Others say in some fashion, you got to create to get through all the crap to get to the good stuff. But I think that's more to do with does the muse exist? Do you wait for inspiration or where do you fall in that camp? Is it important to create in some fashion every day or to wait until it comes to you?
When I was a teenager, when I was 12 to 16 and writing all those songs that led to the first albums, it was every day. Yeah. I think partially because I was so enamored with, it was so new to me. I'd written a song here and a song there, but then all of a sudden the floodgates opened. And I was so excited when my mom got home from school to say, oh my God, listen to this new song I wrote. That's one of my favorite sentences to this day, because it's you get to say, I'm about to play you something you've never heard before. Yeah. And that to me is so thrilling. And so for me, that was day after day. And I also was really finding my way. And I knew that everything was not good. I knew that a lot of it was like a diary. It was okay, I'm expressing, and I was a teenager and I needed that. But now I'm the opposite. I wait for inspiration to hit, and it usually comes in waves. There was a 10-day period I think it was last July, 2020. And it was 10 days of a lot of this album got written and a lot of the next album got written. And it was just that moment, and I went with it. And then other moments, I feel better vocally, and I'm great, I'm cutting vocals this week. And then other moments, my business hat's on and my brainstorming, that side of my creativity is going. And it seems to cycle for me. And it for me now, it feels like one of two things has to happen. Either I have to be just hit with an idea that drops in, maybe out of something emotional I'm going through. Again, I'm kind of singing my thoughts and it just comes out. Or if somebody sends me a track, which I'm always very open to. There's a lot of that on my new album where people sent me a track, and it just, that's always fun. It's like getting a present. You're opening a gift going, oh my God, I hope something. And sometimes someone will send me 6 tracks and I go, send me 6 more, because nothing, again, I could force something, but nothing resonated deeply enough. And then other times, DJ Tracy Young sent me the track for One Step Closer. She was in Paris DJing, And I heard it and I was like, this is my song. This is my song. I already know it. I just have to wait for, and something mediocre dropped in and I left it alone. And then when I wasn't trying and wasn't forcing it, the what became the song One Step Closer dropped in. And I love that because it's when someone sends you a track and there's a collaboration, I never would have come up with that idea on my own. That was triggered by her greatness. And I love that this album is full of that for me, because I was always like an all songs written by kind of control freak fanatic, but also because as a young songwriter, so many people were like, really, you wrote this song? And I was absolutely out to prove myself. And I felt like I wanted people to know I could write a song top to bottom before I ventured out into these types of collaborations. And now I have no ego, and it's all a gift now to me to collaborate.
But let's talk about that ritual, because to me as a writer, there are certain things I like to have with me, chairs I like to be in, and I'm fascinated by the rituals of writers. When it comes down, to songwriting, is there a certain place, certain time of day, certain things you have to have with you where, whether it's superstition or whatever, you just tend to get your best writing done?
So, no, actually. So for me, it's anywhere, anytime the idea happens, honestly. So I could be crossing the street. If that melody comes, that's where it comes. I'll go sit on a bench and finish it. There's a song on the new album called Me Not Loving You. That to this day, this fascinates me because I had the hook floating around in my head for a while. And I came home one day and sat at my keyboard, and literally, what do I do while I'm waiting for the pain to go away? What do I do? And I was literally like, okay. And I just kept going. And a lot of what you hear in that recording, that was the song writing itself in real time.
Huh.
And I was like, holy crap. That's really never happened where I was like simultaneously writing and recording something. And then other times it's my prized possession, my Liberace piano, which I always feel like I'm just babysitting for him and it's still his. And I mean, that's a magical place if I am going to be writing with an instrument. But again, a lot of times it's head to paper. And then this is the first place I go to play it and hear it out loud.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to be born with perfect pitch, so I can write D, E, G. Oh, it's a D7 over an A chord or whatever, and I can be writing that on a plane, and I already know what it sounds like in my head, which is incredibly convenient. Mm-hmm. Again, I don't think like, hey, I'm the greatest because I have perfect pitch. I think it's incredibly convenient to not have to, especially since I'm an awful guitarist, so I don't have a guitar strapped to my back and my carry-on luggage on a plane. But this is where I sit for hours and luxuriate in the music. But I have literally no writing rituals in that way.
Really? That I thought for sure that's, even if it, maybe other certain things you do when you're in a rut, you're just not feeling it. Do you try to push through, or is there certain techniques that you use? I don't want to call it block, but when you're in that rut.
No, I really, really try not to panic, and I leave it alone, and I know it's going to come to me. That's really all I do. I mean, I have so many songs written. It's like a safety net for me. So I even feel like if I said, well, I want to put out an album a year for the next 5 years, I have that. Doesn't mean it's going to be brilliant, but I have it. So now I just want the inspired ideas. Now I just want the inspired ideas that resonate with me in my life right now, which I always feel if I'm in tune with what's going on in the world and in my own life, and I'm in that harmony, then chances are it will resonate with the people out there. Stars all still have to align for people to hear the music, but yeah, I've learned more and more you cannot force timing, in my opinion. Yeah. It's just, so I just wait. I've become really, really zen about it. Like I'm by nature a type A proactive person. I spent the better part of the last decade deathly ill, dealing with Lyme disease, and I had to come to a point where I had to surrender I had to allow my body to be doing what it was doing. And I had to trust that answers were going to come and that I might not be able to just Google them and get them in an instant. It was that I had to wait and I had to listen. And I couldn't even overly warm up my voice. If I was going to do a show, I had to really save my energy and I had to trust. And that applies to the songwriting too, for me. It's just, I do think the most inspired things drop in when you're just open to receive. And, that's what's been happening. And it's great. It's a great feeling. It really brings the joy back to songwriting. If ever anyone does feel like, oh my God, I don't think, in my opinion, I'll say for me, I never got anywhere like white knuckling an idea, but the joy and the beauty of the waiting and the dropping in, it's mystical because I still don't know, Lost in Your Eyes. I remember coming home from school and my hands just went, like you've heard the intro before, but like my hands just were like, and I was like, oh my God, where is this coming from? And it was just flowing through, I was just out of my own way. And
so
that's
that didn't,
for me, the most important thing.
That wasn't in your mind before you sat down. It just kind of happened right at the piano. Wow.
Yes, it literally happened. And the whole song poured out as fast as I could keep up with writing it down. Done. It was, written in 10 minutes. And I never changed a word or a note. I was like, I call them my Song Fairies, my song angels. I go, thank you. Whoever dropped that one down. Thank you.
Right. I have to say that when this is a very common, whatever metaphor image that songwriters tell me when they tell me about songs, they always say what you said. It's always dropping down and it's always this looking up. It's interesting. No one says, yeah, I got it. I pulled it off the ground. It was right over there. It's always, I can't tell you how many times I've heard metaphors of like buckets, holding a bucket out and the raindrops. People, it's just what you did. It's that kind of looking upwards, but it's so funny how the metaphor is never, it was just there on the ground and I picked it up. It's always, it dropped down.
I know. And I don't know if it's like incredibly pretentious or incredibly unpretentious to say like writers or channelers. I just, and I've been to psychic mediums and I've watched people channel. And if this gets in the way, they can't channel, you know? So I've just really decided in my life as a writer, as a vocalist, my job is to keep my channel clear. And then there's just not a whole lot of pressure on me. Like it's really freeing. When you actually realize, like, I find it less egotistical because I'm like, if I'm not the one doing it and I'm just having to receive it, okay.
Interesting.
How hard is that? I just have to keep myself clear and healthy. And, that's my goal every day.
Yeah. The role of movement. I'm fascinated by this also, the role of movement to the writing process. So many songwriters tell me they get ideas when they're hiking, biking, swimming, literal movement. Now, I think there's two kinds. There's the kind where someone else is doing the moving for you, plane, train, bus, car. And then there's the whatever you want to call it, self-locomotion, where it's swimming. And we'll talk about both of those. And I'm interested in the second one first. Do you get a lot of ideas? And I've heard songwriters, these theories about the cadence, the rhythm, the limb movement, the cadence, the swing of the limbs gives the melodies, or getting ideas from turn signals or from going over bumps. And how often does that happen with you?
There's definitely rhythmic inspiration. Look, I just mentioned earlier, crossing a street, and you mentioned swimming. So the minute you mentioned swimming, again, it goes back to, I think that's somebody like in a hypnotic state. Right? You're doing something repetitive, you're clearing your head, and so things can drop in. I noticed for me on this new album, like there's a song called Legendary, and da, 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 you're faking a right swing, you're taking what they bring, you're making a name because baby, this is your ring. That rhythm for me feels like a trip I took to London 2 years ago. It feels like London. It feels like the rhythm of London. It feels like it feels like Cockney rhyming slang. It feels like the traffic and the chaos and so you know, I guess I am like rhythmic and visual as well. It wasn't literal. It wasn't like, oh, I wrote it in London because the bus wheels were keeping. So it's not that literal, but I think it just reflects, like, again, places, times, you know, and rhythms. Yeah. Yeah.
I hear gardening a lot too. And I think that's to do with, as I think you alluded to, the boredom, the monotony of it, right? If you're not focusing on, if you don't have to focus on what you're doing and your mind can be free, you know, that can be very helpful, because I hear gardening a lot too. So yeah, that's an interesting component, because so many people get these
airplanes,
ideas.
You know, airplanes always were, because again, you go up, you're just shutting out your real life when you're up in a plane, especially before you were on your phone on planes. Right. That was always a huge one for me, because it just is a bubble, you know, and you're kind of in like a little vortex, and yeah. And I always say, like, a little bit of boredom, because I'm someone who I used to like to always be doing something, and I would always have a distraction of some sort. And I'd want that because I'm a very anxious person. But I've learned for writing, if you're puttering and you're a little bit bored and you're in a little bit of an angsty emotional place, the songs are going to come.
So you mentioned emotion now, and I want to talk about that too, because is it easy? I mean, Hemingway once said he couldn't write about Paris when he was in Paris. He needed distance to write about that place. But I'd like to talk about that also, whether it's writing about a place, but I think writing about an emotion. Do you need distance from an emotion to be able to write about it? Or is it best to write in that moment when things are still fresh? I mean, especially like with heavy emotional weight.
Right. No, that's such a good question. I mean, I do both. I think that, you know, sometimes there's, whether it's a romantic feeling or, you know, angst about romance or whatever the thing is, right, while it's stirring, it really can, like, I'm thinking about a song that I wrote that's going to go on the next album, actually, that was so specific to a time and a person. And it was like, I was writing the song in real time, and it was so therapeutic for me. And, you know, I've heard also about song. It's like what they say in musical theater. It's like, the reason why there is musical theater is because sometimes your emotion is so great, words aren't enough. You have to sing about it. That's like the next level. And that's how I feel. I feel like, it's that way you feel when you watch a movie and you're all like, again, I use the word luxuriating in the emotion. So I do that. But then there are songs that, you know, it's great when you have perspective and you're looking back, I think. Like that song, Me Not Loving You, I was talking about, that I wrote more with perspective and from a distance. That Tracy Young song I was talking about, One Step Closer, that was like with perspective and from a distance. And like verse 1, I took myself back to what it was like to be in the angst of a situation. And then when by the time you hit the first chorus, I'm in okay, this is how I'm going to flip the script and become empowered by the situation. And this is what I'm going to do to move forward. I'm really, really happy that I have an acting studies background because you really can take yourself to that time and place, even if you're not in it, I find. And again, like a lot of my songs, especially the latest round of songs, travel. Like I always loved country music because I love a good country twist. I love a good, like, again, we're starting here, we're in the angst, but this is how we're moving on and moving forward. And that's a theme on the whole album. And that's a theme in my life. And that's a theme that, like, you know, in remaking Lost in Your Eyes with Joey McIntyre, it's like, here's how we are looking back and staying current and moving forward all at the same time. And I think that's what a lot of the songs do. And so a lot of them were written from the perspective of I've moved on, but I think I'm pretty good at taking myself back to the time and place.
And not that I'm obsessed with Hemingway, but I did read another Hemingway quote recently, just last night, where he said, writers should go to art galleries and get inspired. And I'm curious as to how often do other type, whether it's visual art, how often do those things inspire you, if any, in your songwriting?
Oh my gosh, that is so interesting. You know, I'm trying to think of any specific recent example. I mean, I'm going to say I am very cinematic in not only some of my writing, but in arrangements and production. But it's not necessarily based off of seeing a visual or seeing art. It's more creating a visual in my head, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was younger, I used to get inspired by, whether it was books or movies, a quote that might have triggered something. I've not been a big art gallery person. Any like snobby intellectuals out there are going to be like more snobby about me.
Yeah.
It's okay. That's really not my like demographic, honestly. I'm not into impressing people at a dinner party. I'm into doing whatever makes me happy. But with that said, like I have eccentric things, so I have this carousel horse in my,
nice.
Like that's inspirational to me. My piano is of art, and that's inspirational to me. Fashion is inspirational to me. I have a gown over there that I wore to my mom's 50th birthday.
Wow.
Myself with visuals that inspire me in general, but I've not written a song about the horse.
No, but it's still part. But to me, that's part of your ritual. It
feeds me.
Yeah,
right. It does feed me to be in a space that because my home is a live workspace. And or we'll call it a creative space. So everything about this home feeds me. Yeah. I have trinkets from when I was 10 years old that I sometimes hold, and I get that sense memory. And look, my new album's called, and I'm not saying this as a shameless album plug, but it's called The Body Remembers, because I am very visceral. Yes, I'm visual, but I'm very visceral. It's like what I'm doing. It's the touch of things and the smell of things and the feeling surrounding things that inspires me for sure. There's a song on the album called Strings that it's so many things in one. It's spoken word, it's orchestral. I'm a big I love, I'd love to score a movie someday. I'm a big Thomas Newman fan. So all those inspirations find their way into my music. In theater, like there's a theatricality to some of what I do. And so I visualize the song Love Don't Care. I reflect on Donna Summer and her big dramatic, out of tempo openings and breakdowns of songs. And, in writing that, I'm in a room with that disco ball spinning and that so I'm very visual in my imagination. And that's like a part of the creation of the music to me and the feeling.
Yeah. I think we all have things that we like to have with us when we write, whether it's, coffee mug or a pen. That's what I mean about the the dress or the horse. I mean, it doesn't. Yes, you could probably write in a dark closet, but having those things around you, I'm a big proponent of that. I think it just gives you that confidence. I have a chair I like to write in because it's happened before, and what the hell? Why not go back there again?
Right, sure. I will say this though, even like what I'm wearing or if I have makeup on, that can influence, like if you go to my social media and you see the day I was rehearsing the song Strings, I do not look social media ready. I mean, my roots needed to be touched up. My hair was in a messy ponytail. I had no makeup on. I had a sloppy sweatshirt on. And it contributed to the vulnerability of that vocal.
Interesting.
I think if I was dolled up and propped up a little and it might have come across a little too presentational. I might not have been dropped into the vulnerability of that vocal. And it's like that for writing too. I mean, I think if, you are curled up on the, cold floor because you're like oh my God, my life is ending today. In that moment, there's going to be something different that happens in the writing than, if like when I'm going to rehearse a concert, I want to feel like a rock star. I want to show up and feel that vibe. And so that can definitely influence things.
Reading. How much reading do you get to do? I do find that songwriters are voracious readers for the most part. So how much reading do you get to do? And does that work your way into the songs ever? Even if it doesn't, I love talking about songwriters reading habits.
Sure. So I used to read more than I read lately. When I was younger, like everything from reading Emma to What Makes Sammy Run by Bud Schulberg, which was always a favorite of mine. I was always looking for things to read that resonated with me. I was never looking for the snobby reading material that was going to make me feel cool about reading it. I was like, I want to read something that just, I read a book, I think it's called How to Be a Grown-Up. It was a couple years. It was a really good book. I tend to read stuff I can visualize as movies or musicals. I'm always thinking in that way. But I don't think I've read a really good book lately because I've been, this like 3 years in this creative process with this album.
Yeah.
And at the end of the night, I'm going to distract myself probably with a movie. I'm probably going to put on Netflix and my dogs are going to curl up with me. And that's how I'm going to distract myself. Reading feels a little too intense, honestly, at the end of a highly creative day for me with all the output. I started reading Rob Sheffield's very fun book, Love is a Mixtape, which again, he wrote this amazing piece for Rolling Stone on me. And I keep saying, I think that's a musical. I think we're going to collaborate on a musical. But again, that book lights me up because it's somebody's real accounting of their life and their love and loss and how music played a role. So I guess I have read recently. I'm in the middle of that book, but I haven't read it in a little while though. When I have had spells of reading, I love autobiographies. And one of my favorite autobiographies is Rosemary Clooney's Girl Singer. And again, like I had no idea how much I would relate. I had no idea that she started her career on the road at 16, like I did.
Yeah.
And she was like one of the only badass women allowed to hang out with the Rat Pack.
Right.
So that was very inspirational. Like that and reading about Liberace. And so I've always loved a good autobiography.
I tend to read a couple books at a time. I'll read a fiction book and then a nonfiction book. Some songwriter told me about that and it hooked me on it. It takes you twice as long to read. What I love about that is that when I read the fiction book, but then when I'm not reading it, I've got the nonfiction book, that fiction book is still in the back of my head. Something's going on back there.
Interesting.
That when I come back to it, for whatever reason, I'm in a better place than if I just was reading that thing straight through. I have no idea why, but it completely changed my reading habits.
Right. Something about the wiring of your brain or something. Yeah. I don't know. I'll have to try it at some point.
And I've got to make sure they're different. Like, can't be two novels. It's got to be fiction, then nonfiction or something like that. So anyway.
What the last book I read, this is very funny because it wasn't as long ago as I thought it was. I read both of Christopher Reeve's autobiographies. And the reason is because, as I was saying earlier, because I've dealt with, I look like the picture of health right now. And in a lot of ways right now, knock wood, I'm in a great place. But I dealt with such a long chapter of debilitating pain. And I have weird episodes and things that come and go. And I was like, I would like some inspiration in this department because on my worst day, it was not as challenging as it was for Christopher Reeve.
Yeah.
So I read his books and savored them and got so much out of them. And he was so candid. And just what an incredible purpose he created for himself when his accident happened. And again, that's like, I'm always looking for how to flip the script. And so, you know, I want to read from people who have been in far worse circumstances than I, you know, to gain some insight and some techniques for how to get through the trying times. And so I did read those actually just last year. I did read those in the last year.
Huh.
Yeah.
See, there you go.
Yep. But yeah, I'm into inspirational, aspirational stories.